Good afternoon, traders. Good afternoon. Welcome to ActivTrades Monday Market Matters webinar for the 14th of July 2025. Hope you're all well. Hope you've had a good weekend. Hope you are ready for an interesting and eventful week ahead. Another eventful week in a year of eventful weeks, but plenty for us to talk about and discuss, as always, not only with just regards to the news and how the markets are playing out, but also for our education element today, talking about managing trader motivation. As we go into the sort of summer months where markets might be a little bit quieter, a little bit less volatile, he says, what I'm looking to do is on a couple of our sessions, we'll just look at, rather than looking at, let's say, markets and methods as types of education, we'll talk about the sort of what I would call the fourth M, about managing myself. And part of that is about managing your sort of trading psychology, managing yourself, and as it says here, managing your trader motivation, okay, and how you can do that to help you become the best trader you possibly can be. Okay, so what shall we talk about today? As always, because it's Monday Market Matters, we'll have a little conversation about the news in terms of what's happened over the weekend and what we can expect to come down the sort of the pipeline in this week ahead. But then, as I said, we're going to talk about managing trader motivation. We'll talk about the importance of it. We'll talk about how to manage that motivation to avoid burnout, and how to overcome lapses in motivation, because all of us have to deal with that, and how to develop the knowledge and skills to help us improve our motivation. So plenty to discuss there. And then, as always, okay, what we will do is we will switch across to the live markets to take a look at how the US markets are opening at the start of the week. So, as always, okay, plenty for us to discuss and for us to cover. As always, we just want to make sure that the technology is working in our favour. So I hope that all of you can hear my voice. Hopefully all of you can see the slides. That would be a great confirmation, just to know that, the technology is working for us rather than against us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Paul. Traded and invested for many years, traded for funds, traded for clients. Primarily, I tend to focus on trading FX indices and commodities in my own sort of trading, looking to be a trend trader on longer term swing and position trades, and a mean reversion and reversal trader for shorter term intraday trading. I've worked with, coached, mentored, educated, probably thousands of traders over the years. So I'll be able to sort of share some of my own experiences of working on trading floors, working with traders, trading alongside other traders in terms of, how we will go about managing trader motivation. But we'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. As always, if you're joining us for the first time, you're very welcome here. Monday Market Matters is the regular ActivTrades webinar series, with the aim being to help traders start the week in the right frame as we prepare for the opening of the US markets in about sort of 25 minutes time. So every Monday, 2:00 London, we take a look at the major news for the week ahead. We have a major thrust on education to help you build your trading knowledge. We'll also have a look and a chat about the ActivTrades platforms and tools that you have access to as an ActivTrades client. And then, as I said, as part of that, we'll look at the live markets at the start of the US session. So there is always plenty to cover, always plenty to discuss. But if you have a question, then you're very welcome to put that into the chat box. If it's within the remit of what we're looking to talk about today, I'll very happily sort of help and guide you if I can. Okay, so as always, as I said, we'll take a look at what is the major news coming down for the week ahead. What do we need to be aware of and why? I say this most weeks that, if you're at the start of your trading and investing journey, I would not expect you to be able to maybe analyze the economic data that is released, but I would expect you to know when the economic data is released, mainly because some of the high impact economic data will induce volatility into the markets. And volatility is very much a double-edged sword. When you're on the right side of it, it can make for a great trading session. When you're on the wrong side of it, it can make for a challenging trading session. So it is in your best interest to understand when the major formal economic data is being released. And you can do that on an economic calendar. There is an economic calendar on the ActivTrades website and elsewhere on the internet, so there's no excuse not to know when the major formal economic data is being released. So we've got an interesting week ahead. Firstly, I suppose we had what might be termed a relatively quiet weekend compared to other ones we've seen over the last few months. But a lot of the sort of the markets this week were started, or the volatility was kicked off by the once again the sort of President Trump's tariff letters to certain countries and regions at the end of last week, in particular things like the European Union and Mexico, and the sort of laying out the elements of the negotiation position and the sort of tariffs that will be likely to be brought into play, and that will have an impact on markets this week. As we see, for want of a better word, the sort of kind of negotiation tit for tats as as both sides take positions and plays out, and of course, as that changes, that will invariably have an impact upon markets. And then on top of that, we have that layer of President Trump's tweeting, directly to people, and that in itself can have an impact on markets. But when we look at the formal economic data here, let me just bring up the old sort of drawing pen. We've got quite a bit coming out as well. And what we have tomorrow, that we'll probably be very interested in is European, for the euro, the German ZEW economic sentiment will be released. We will also see in the afternoon, for those of us here in the UK and Europe, we'll see the Canadian CPI numbers, but probably more people will be more interested in the US CPI numbers. All right, that's what people will be genuinely interested to see how that is playing out. And we also have in the UK in the evening, we have the Mr. Bailey, the Governor of the Bank of England. He'll be speaking, and there is a bit of UK data coming out. So we have Mr. Bailey speaking. Then on Wednesday morning, 7 o'clock, we have UK CPI. And then on Thursday, we have the sort of average hourly earnings and sort of jobs numbers on Thursday. And we also have Miss Reeves, the Chancellor. She will be giving her Mansion House speech this week as well. So there are quite a few elements there that are relevant to the UK economy, UK stocks, UK equity index, and UK sterling. So there will be that. Wednesday, we have, after having had CPI on Tuesday afternoon, we will have PPI on Wednesday afternoon. We've got Aussie job numbers on Thursday, and another thing people will be very keen on is US retail sales on Thursday afternoon. US is a consumer economy, so of course the retail sales numbers gives traders and investors an insight into sort of the health and the confidence of the US consumer. And then on Friday, we have a relatively quiet day of formal news, just the University of Michigan consumer sentiment and their inflation expectation numbers as well. So there is a good bit of data coming out this week. On top of that, we also start to sort of kick into sort of US equities earnings season, and we will see an awful lot of them Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in particular, some of the sort of big names, especially in terms of US finance companies. So Tuesday, before the market open tomorrow, we'll have JP Morgan, Citibank, Wells Fargo, BlackRock. And then on Wednesday, we've got sort of like Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, etc. on Wednesday before the market opens. And there's a whole host of other companies and finance companies, but we're getting to see an awful lot of them this week. And so they themselves will also have an impact upon markets. So, as I said, it pays to keep on top of the formal economic calendar and also to understand the earnings dates and releases, and also, as I say, just keeping on top of the news flow and order flow and President Trump's social media. So I appreciate there is a lot to cover there, but the whole idea is to sort of help us build a picture of what's going on in markets, and in particular, looking at sort of whether we're in risk on or risk off sentiment as a starting point for our analysis. Okay, so with news complete, let's talk about our main educational element for traders here, namely managing trader motivation. it would be interesting to know, for those of you joining us here for the live session today, how would you grade your trader motivation at the moment? If you had to grade it from a scale out of 1 to 10, with 1 being poor and 10 being excellent, what is the honest number that you would give yourself in terms of, managing trader motivation? It'd be interesting. You could put that in the chat box. As I said, there's no judgment. It's always just traders talking about being the best trader that they can be. And as I said, we're happy to help here with this. But as the slide says, the journey to consistent success as a trader can be a long and frustrating one, which may take some time, and that's based on a whole host of external and internal factors that will have an impact for each individual. During your trading journey, you will experience peaks, valleys, and plateaus. And during valleys and plateaus, it can be hard to manage or maintain our trader motivation. So, how do we manage our trader motivation? What can we do to help ourselves in those areas? And so that's what we're going to discuss today, how we can manage and hopefully improve our trader motivation. As I said, your trading journey will consist of a series of peaks, valleys, and plateaus. And part of the best way to manage yourself is to be honest with yourself about where you presently are. If you were to just take a snapshot of your trading at the moment, would you consider yourself to be on a peak? Would you consider yourself to be on a plateau? Or would you consider yourself to be in a bit of a valley? The thing is, all three of them will present different challenges to your overall trader motivation. But as I said, for those of you joining us for the live session today here, maybe just take a moment to look at, okay, what is where do you currently feel you are? Okay, just, there's no point in being, not dishonest with yourself. You might as well just be honest with yourself, because that's a starting point. Do you feel that you're on a peak, on a plateau, or in a valley? And as I said, this is a good, this is a good exercise to do, regardless of whether you've been trading for 2 months or 2 decades. It's something that actually should probably do on a kind of almost 6 monthly basis, just almost like as a snapshot to help you manage and improve yourself. So I suppose if we're going to talk about trader motivation, I should really quite quickly and clearly define motivation. Okay, as it says there, reason or reasons for acting or behaving in a particular way. Or number 2, a desire or willingness to do something. So you have enthusiasm. Motivation is the experience of desire or aversion. Okay, you want something, or you want to avoid or escape something. So the thing about motivation, it has both an objective and a subjective aspect, and it is a very personal thing. I will talk about here about strategies and tactics and and definitions, but there is, I also appreciate, a very personal element. Okay, for one person's motivated might be another person sort of unmotivated. Is very personal thing. Hence why going through these exercises we talk through, and just look yourself in the mirror and be very clear and honest with yourself, because actually that is an element displaying integrity when you're sort of being honest about your situation. It's very difficult to change your situation for the better if you're not honest about where you're starting from, and that's one of the things that good traders always are. They are honest about their situation. Okay, they are grounded in it, they understand it, and whether they are on a peak or whether they're on a plateau or in the valley, understanding and recognizing where you're starting from is a good way to help you get towards where you want to be. So when it comes to being a trader, well then, part of the snapshot is understanding, well, why do you want to be a trader? What actually is it that drives you to be a trader? Is it for the financial reward? Is it for the thrill, okay, or the status of being a trader? Is it for the challenge? Is it because you want to impress someone, whether that be yourself or somebody else? Or is it to escape your present lifestyle? And I could probably put a whole host of other reasons as well. I've just, put up ones there that I hear repeated, again and again to myself. The reason is it's important to know what your true motivation is, okay? Or whether you should even be trading at all right? That is sometimes a conversation that needs to be had. All right. But it is important to know what your true motivation is. And if you just take a moment to consider that, and you can put your answers in the chat box, do you know what your true motivation is? Okay. Do you understand what it is your true motivation is? Okay. And there's no right or wrong. Okay. It is about understanding what yours is. Okay. It's about being honest and having that integrity to recognize where you are coming from. And one of the reasons this is all important to understand your true motivation is that your motivations, they will filter into your trading discipline. Everybody talks about how you need to be a disciplined trader, but there's a lot of things that go into you being a disciplined trader. There's a lot of things that can actually have both a positive and a negative impact on your ability to maintain your discipline as a trader. And as I said, motivation is important because it feeds into your trading discipline, okay? It feeds into your trading discipline. Everybody talks about trading discipline. Everybody wants to talk about trading discipline. Everybody says that, you need to be disciplined as a trader. But the thing is, understanding motivation is important because it feeds into it, all right? Feeds into it in the same way that, your lifestyle will feed in and out of your trading discipline. The rewards, whatever they may be, and they may not necessarily be financial, as once again, it's an opportunity to define that. Your past experiences, both in trading and in life, they will all have an impact upon your trading discipline. A need for instant gratification or your ability to manage that will have an impact on your discipline. Having good routines or the absence of any routines, that will have an impact upon your trading discipline, as along with your ego, okay, in terms of, how well you understand it, how well you recognize it, whether it manages you or you manage itself. All of these elements. And once again, I could add a lot more, will feed into your trading discipline. And it might also even be said, they will feed into your trading motivation as well. There are real links between all of these elements. And as I said, understanding yourself starts to put you in a better position to actually move forward and make progress that is beneficial to you in your trading business. The important thing is, well, okay, what can we do? All right, what can we do? How can we improve this? Okay, so as I said earlier, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you score your own trader motivation? Okay, and as I said, be honest about it. Okay, even if you don't wish to be honest to the group, you can be honest to yourself. All right, when you look at it, are you on a peak? Are you on a plateau? Or are you deep in a valley? And as I said, there is no judgment. There's no right or wrong. It's about recognizing where you are on your journey. We are all at different stages on our journey towards trading mastery, and recognizing this is what can help us make better progress going forward. And ultimately, that's what we want, isn't it? We want to be, a better trader tomorrow than we were yesterday. It's about just working our way forward slowly but surely. So, right, let's have a little look at what we can do to help. What can we do to basically help us, regardless of whether we are on a peak, a plateau, or deep in a valley? So one of the first questions and points to consider is, well, how do you define a peak? Okay, in trading terms, how do you define a peak? And my definition would be a personal peak is a triumph over fear. And the good thing about this, the interesting thing is about this, is that comes into trading, but I would also suggest that comes into every area of your life. A personal peak is a triumph over fear. Now, other people may differ, they may have a different definition, and that's absolutely fine. Okay, that's absolutely fine. That's what makes a market. But for my definition, a personal peak is a triumph over fear. So think about it. If you're trading well, how strong is your motivation likely to be? Okay, it's likely to be strong, isn't it? It's likely to have no issues, especially if you are on what you believe to be a personal peak. But if you are on a peak, if you have been doing well, then I add a note of caution, all right? Beware of complacency, okay? Beware of hubris, okay? Otherwise, you're setting the conditions for a descent into your next valley. And that valley, as I said, that could be a trading valley, it could be a personal valley. But taking the snapshot and considering it and spending some time to work through it is what will help you, as I said, help you manage yourself. And that's what we want to be able to do, help manage ourselves better every single day as a trader. So if you are on a peak, think about how do you define a peak? Okay, how strong is your motivation? But as I said, also add a note of caution. For those of you who consider that you are presently on a plateau or you've hit a plateau in your development as a trader, the first point I'd like to make clear is that a plateau isn't necessarily negative, okay? A plateau can be a time for you to rest, reflect, and renew, okay? So just want to be clear on that. And once again, that's my definition. A plateau isn't necessarily negative. The challenge you have in life and in trading is when you stay on a plateau for too long, you get comfortable, all right? So if you feel you are on a plateau, be careful of becoming too comfortable on a plateau. How do you do that? Well, part of that is you refocus on your reasons for trading. We talked about motivation a few slides back, understanding what are your drivers, what is your inner motivation, what are those reasons? And also refocus on your vision for what you want to become. What do you want to become as a trader? And with that, create a new set of goals to inspire you from your present plateau. So a plateau isn't necessarily negative, but the challenge is that when you stay too long on a plateau, that's when you get comfortable and that's when you stop making progress. So refocus on your reasons for trading, refocus on your vision for what you want to become, and start to create a new set of goals and objectives to help inspire you to move forward from your present plateau. And I said, for those of you joining us here today, how many of you would consider yourself to be on a plateau as a trader? Once again, you can put that in the chat box. There's no right or wrong. Okay, there's no there's no judgment. It's we're all here as traders trying to improve and get better every single day. So if you've answered the questions and you consider yourself to be in a valley, let's have a talk about what it means to be in a valley, and most importantly, how do we get out of a valley? So when you're in a valley, part one, the first point is things are never as bad as they seem. Okay, they're never as bad as they seem, but I can understand it might feel like that. You might have that sense when you are in a personal or professional trading valley. You cannot always control external events, but you can control your personal peaks and valleys by what you believe and what you do. The path out of the valley appears when you choose to see things differently, okay? And you change your valley into a peak when you find and use the good that is hidden in that bad time. So if you ever listen or watch to like professional sports people, whether it be footballers or Formula One drivers, cricketers, whatever they may be, you'll hear them always talk about they're always looking to take the positive out of a situation, even if they've taken a terrible loss. Okay, they start to look at what are the positives that I can take out of this experience, this moment. And as it says there, you change your valley into a peak when you find and use the good that is hidden in the bad time. Okay, you find it and you use it. Sometimes that can be challenging. Sometimes that you might struggle with the motivation to do that. But I'm here to tell you, find the good in the valley and start to use it. Okay, and it might just be a small thing. Okay, it might just be a small element, but it is all about starting to change. Okay, change direction. As it says there, the path out of the valley appears when you choose to see things differently. And sometimes, as I said, when we're in a deep valley, it appears like there is no way out. But I assure you, things are never as bad as they seem. There is always a way out, but part of it starts when you choose to see things differently. Here, and as I said, here we are to talk about managing motivation as a trader, but equally it's applicable to your professional lives, your personal lives, etc. Part two of what we can look at doing when you're in a valley is when you're in a valley, it can be easy to consider giving up, right? Your motivation and your enthusiasm may have completely disappeared, okay? And, you may have already experienced that as part of your trading journey, and that's fine, okay? It is part of the journey. So here's what you can start to do. Here are positive things you can actually start to do. Number one, take 100% responsibility. You are where you are. Okay, don't. It's easy as a trader to blame markets, okay, or blame the system, or blame, President Trump's tweets, whatever. Okay, you take 100% responsibility. You are where you are. All right. You then also have to debrief and ask yourself, well, what led you to this place? And in this, you have to be brutally honest with yourself. It's no use sort of, trying to avoid things or trying to sort of gild the lily. Be brutally honest with yourself. I would also suggest that when you are in a valley, you embrace the pain. The pain in a valley can wake you up to a truth that you have been ignoring. Okay. And as a trader, that means that perhaps maybe you've been trying to trade a style or a time frame that doesn't really suit you, or you've been trying to trade a method, okay, that is, let's say, a range bound method, and actually your records all show you that you are better at trading trends. Okay, embrace the pain. The pain in the valley can wake you up to a truth you have been ignoring. As we just said there in the previous slide, what is the good you can take from this situation? Find it. It will be there. Sometimes that might be hard, but it will be there, and it's your job to find it and take it from the situation. It's also time to revisit your vision or even create a new one. Imagine yourself enjoying your better future in such specific, believable details that you soon enjoy doing what takes you there, okay? That vision and connection with it, these are the things that can start to help you lead you out of a valley, okay? Lead you out of a valley, and that's where that's what we want to do. So part 3 of getting out of valley is, well, what else can you do? What can you actually do to help you? The first one, and this is one I've used myself over the years, okay, is to get outside of yourself. If you're in a bit of a valley, it can be a little bit easy to withdraw, okay? It can be a little bit easy to get caught up in your own thinking, to basically just to focus on almost like a little bit of a doom spiral, okay? But I'm here to tell you, get outside of yourself, okay? Get outside of yourself rather than being caught up in yourself. Get outside of yourself. Socialize with fellow traders, all right? No one knows your journey better than another trader. Now, I appreciate, we're here today. There's people from all over, not only the UK, but all over the world. And I appreciate in these days that, if you do not have the ability to physically socialize with other traders, you have the opportunity to build relationships, build friendships with other traders. Remember, no one knows your journey better than another trader. One of the other things I can suggest is be humble and help others. And that is another element that can help you with getting outside of yourself, because it can be easy to withdraw. It can also help you to embrace a new perspective. Ultimately, it's just a trade, all right, or a series of trade. It says nothing about your value as a human being. If you've had 3, 4, 5 losing trades on the trot, which happens to all traders as part of your journey, you have to realize it's just a trade, okay? It's just a trade. If you planned your trade, traded your plan, managed your risk, and recorded your trade and reviewed it, well, then invariably it was just a trade, okay? It is just part of your journey as a trader. It says nothing about your value as a human being, okay? And as I said, sometimes we lose perspective when we're in a bit of a valley, but I'm here to help you with all these elements to help you start to turn the corner, okay, to sort of find the path out of the valley. So what else can we do? What else can I share with you from my own experience of coaching and mentoring lots of traders over the years is that sometimes your valley is due to burnout, okay, due to burnout. And especially if you are someone who is engaged in short-term aggressive intraday trading and scalping, okay, sometimes your valley is due to burnout. So part of your job as a trader is to ensure that you're managing your physical, your mental, your emotional, and your spiritual health, all right? Take breaks before you need them, not only during the day, but after a few weeks of trading, after a few months of trading. Where possible, get away from your trading desk. That might be to go and have a coffee with a friend. That might be to go and do an intense gym session. That might be to meditate. That might just be to go for a walk around the block. Okay. Ensure you're away from your trading desk. Okay. Also, ensure that you get proper rest and sleep. We sometimes underestimate the powerful impact that proper rest and sleep can have on our trading performance. Okay, we like to think that we are tough and resilient and that we can trade happily on 3 hours sleep, which you can. Okay, but the reality is that actually it's a short-term tactic which will not help you. Ultimately, you want to ensure that you're getting proper rest, your proper sleep. Talk with your coach if you have one, or your trader network, as we just said in the previous slide. Build your own little trader network. Okay, you can all be on different phases of your trading journey. You can help yourself, but also that ability to help you just manage yourself, and also have a life outside of trading. Trading is fantastic. Okay, trading is fabulous. It's magnificent. I love it. But equally, you also have to have a life outside of trading, because it very easily and very quickly can take up all your time and energy. All right. And actually, that's not necessarily success. Certainly not my personal definition of success. Having a life outside of trading and using trading as a tool to help you have a colourful life is part of the joy of it. So take on board all those elements in terms of managing your physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health. And if there's one thing I can tell you about all of that, is that, remember, prevention is always better and usually cheaper than cure. Okay, prevention is always better than cure. And so proactively managing your physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health will benefit you over your journey as a trader. I assure you of that. Okay, I assure you. From my own personal experience, from experience of coaching, mentoring, hundreds of thousands of traders over the years. Okay, prevention is always better than cure. So, just a few final points to consider when we're talking about managing trader motivation. Everyone experiences peaks, valleys, and plateaus on the trading journey. So you are no different. You are no unique. Everybody experiences peaks, valleys, and plateaus. Make sure that your initial reasons for trading match up with your motivations, your ethics, and your values. Because when they do, that is when you tend to be aligned and operating at your best and the best version of yourself. Remember what I said earlier, a personal peak is a triumph over fear. Okay, personal peak is a triumph over fear, and understanding that can benefit you greatly. And you create a peak when you truly follow your vision. All right, you create a peak when you truly follow your vision. So have a think. Is your vision up to date? Is it a little grey? Is it a little dull? Do you need to revisit it and focus on it, okay? And find a way to update it in a way that helps you manage yourself better. Take that on board. Okay, so in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, before we switch across to the charts, the journey to trading success is full of peaks, plateaus, and valleys. If you are on a plateau or in a valley, then your trader motivation may be flagging. I'm here to tell you, actually, embrace it. Be honest about your situation. Make reality your friend. Remember your initial motivations for trading. What is it that brought you to trading in the first place? Reconnect with your vision of the future. If you need to take a break, do so. It's okay. Markets were here before you and I were born. Markets will still be here after you and I have departed this mortal coil. And remember what I said, okay? When it comes to leading yourself out of valley and managing yourself, prevention is always better than cure, ladies and gentlemen. I can say that from personal experience and from experience of, as I said, coaching and managing hundreds and thousands of traders over the year. Okay, before we switch across to the live markets and have a look at what's going on, just a reminder that we'll be here next week as well, 21st of July, Monday, 2 o'clock London time. Next week, we're going to talk about, is trading an art or is it a science? Okay, I'll be giving you my own take on that, and you can maybe maybe you'll be able to contribute that. Maybe you'll have some thoughts about that yourselves. Okay, so I hope you'll join us for that. If you're not already registered, you can register on the website, ActivTrades website, or just use the QR code. Okay, so us switch across to the live markets and see how they're shaping up at the start of the week. As always, okay, if you've got any questions or comments or thoughts about the session, then by all means you're welcome to contact us here at ActivTrades. There is a telephone number there for the English desk, or you can just simply email englishdesk@activtrades.com if you've got questions or considerations that you'd like us to take on board. Or maybe there's topics you'd like to see me cover in future sessions. By all means, if you've got ideas or thoughts about that, please do so, and we'll be happy to help and take that on board. So, if you'll just bear with me for a moment, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch across to the charts, and we'll have a look at how the markets are shaping up. So, just bear with me one moment, and we'll switch across. Okay, so I hope that you can still hear my voice, and I hope you can now see the platforms. Okay, here we are. This is ActivTrades platform here, and let's bring up the drawing tool. So I have profiles set up. This one is a dollar profile. So Aussie dollar on the daily, Euro dollar on the daily, pound dollar on the daily, dollar Swiss franc on the daily, Kiwi dollar, dollar Canadian, dollar yen, and the dollar index. Okay, so for those of you joining us for the first time or at the start of your journey, I have on the ActivTrades platforms, I have quite a few of these profiles set up for profiles for different FX pairs, okay, which I like to trade, profiles for different indexes, for commodities, etc. And the reason being is that it helps me just get a quick snapshot of what's going on in those markets, and it helps me very quickly build a plan of what I'm looking to do. So, I like to operate a lot in the FX market, and my starting point, okay, is always to look at the dollar index, okay, because dollar index is, well, for want of a better word, it is the daddy of the FX market, and so it's always useful as a trader to understand is the dollar, is it awake, is it asleep, is it angry, is it trending, is it range bound? Because understanding that opens up a whole sort of whole pathway of options for me as a trader. Now, we can see here, okay, this is the dollar index in the weekly chart, okay, and those of you who've joined us on a regular basis, we've talked about really 2025, we've seen, quite a strong dollar downtrend there, very, very clear there. But, as the 80s band Echo and the Bunnyman sang, nothing ever lasts forever, and neither does a trend. And I wonder if we are starting to take a little bit of a pause on a trend here. When you have such a long, strong trend, well, then you get to a point where there's nobody to sell to, and what also you get to a point where people who have been selling want to sort of to take their profits. And think about it. What do they need to do if you've been short for a few days, weeks, months, etc.? How do you take your profit? Well, you have to be a buyer. You have to close your position, and that can start to basically to learn to a bit of a snapback. And what we look at is whether that is a kind of we generate a bear squeeze. What I'm looking at here now is if I go down to the daily charts here, okay, let me just get up the old drawing tool. We've just been in that. We've been in that downtrend, and what I was curious about was, you can see that, every time we pull back to the 50, we've pulled away. We've been in this really nice clear downtrend. We've broken the kind of low of the year and drifted away. But as you can actually see here on the daily chart, just drawn in that support and counter trend line, is that really for these last sort of 10 days, so the dollar has just started to nudge its way higher. And the thing that interests me is that if we look, the lows are all higher. Okay, the lows are all higher. They're higher lows. Furthermore, we got up to that low, and we looked like we were sort of maneuvering around a bit. But what we've done here is we've closed above that low. We've also closed above the 20 period moving average, and see how the 20 acted as really quite significant, okay, resistance there. But now, it tried it, but it's actually flipped it. It's flipped it there. It's flipped it from being resistance to maybe now support. And what I'd probably be expected to see is maybe it'll come down into this area here, okay, and then I'll be intrigued to see, what happens if we get a bounce off there, and we also get above the daily 50, well, then that would be some, daily dollar strength. And the thing is, we have an interesting week. We've got an interesting week ahead. We've got news, like US news, like CPI tomorrow, PPI on Wednesday, retail sales on Thursday. That all could have an impact, okay, in terms of dollar strength. and equally dollar weakness, and of course we have all of the tariff shenanigans that are going on as well, all of which will play their part. So it's going to be an interesting week, ladies and gentlemen. So make sure that you're on top of your analysis, make sure you're on top of your risk management, because we'll be curious to see how that particularly plays out. So that's what we're looking at. So actually, if you look at that over those last 10 days, regardless of everyone's been talking about, the dollar has actually strengthened a little bit. Now, that doesn't, as I said, that doesn't mean, as they have a saying in England, one swallow doesn't make a summer. But I'm looking at what needs to happen to sort of see if that scenario is to continue, because then I start looking at, well, how is that sort of reflected against the others? So you've had dollar strength for the last couple of weeks. Well, euro dollar against the daily. Well, euro is weakened against the dollar. But look here, Kiwi dollar has weakened against the dollar. If you look here, this is Canadian dollar has weakened against the dollar. If you look here, Japanese yen has weakened against the dollar. Pound against US dollar, sterling has weakened against the dollar. Swiss franc, okay, which is the strongest of the currencies at the moment. Even the Swiss franc has basically weakened a little bit against the dollar. Okay, so there is a story there. As I said, it's a good starting point to work on. Is if you can understand what the dollar's doing, and certainly in the FX markets, that can give you open up all manner of pathways to help you in terms of how you're going to trade for the for the next few sessions, next few days, next week or so. So, excuse me, that's what we're seeing there on the dollar. Whilst we're here, we've got a little bit of time. Why don't we also have a little bit of a look at the overall indices, and then we'll finish with a little look at the specific US indices on a daily basis. So we're intrigued to know, as I always say, the US markets open at 2:30 UK time. Okay, I appreciate we have a global audience, so it's 9:30 Eastern, but which is 2:30 UK. And what I always say is that normally the first 15 minutes is don't trade the first 15 minutes, because it can be very volatile, especially on a Monday after filling weekend orders. And even the sort of second 15, okay, the first half an hour can be required to have some patience to let the trade play out. But whilst we're here, I thought maybe we'll have a little look at the indexes, because the overall index, and the reason being is, I'm just going to put these all onto weekly charts, okay, just to help us. Part of it is, so this is a profile I have for indices here, okay, so these are my strength, trend, and momentum indices. So I have Dow on the weekly, NASDAQ on the weekly, S&P 500 on the weekly, Russell on the weekly, FTSE on the weekly, Nikkei on the weekly, DAX on the weekly, oil on the weekly. Okay, so we've got a good broad spread there. And in the same way, when looking up the dollar, okay, I can have this give me a snapshot. And so if I look at this, okay, that weekly trend for the Dow has been up. The weekly trend for NASDAQ has been up. The weekly trend for S&P 500 has been up. The weekly trend for the Russell has been up. The weekly trend for the DAX has been up. The weekly trend for the Nikkei has been up. The weekly trend for the FTSE has been up. Okay, so when I get a look like that, it gives me a quick snapshot, and it gives me insight into, as I was saying earlier, just understanding, is there a trend in place? If there is a trend, I don't want to fight it. I don't want to basically, I don't want to fight it. I want to surf a trend, not fight it. Okay, and so when I get to see that markets are aligned like that, that in itself basically gives me a lot of confidence. It gives me, makes me positive about what I'm trying to do and achieve here. But a note of caution as always, because no market moves in one direction. What I look at and I'm interested in is, so if I look at S&P 500 on the weekly chart, we have on the weekly chart, we have pushed to these new highs, and we're holding up here, we're holding here at these highs. And what I'd be looking at is, for me, I'll be looking to see, does it come and test and turn resistance into support before it moves off? Let's get the drawing tool up here. Does it do that? Does it come back and test before it moves high? That's one of the things I'll be looking at to see how that plays out. But when, I'd be looking at that and trying to understand that, part of that is if I go down to the daily chart here, bang, yeah. What I'm curious about is, well, is this a double top that is now forming here on the SP 500? Is that a double top? Let me just draw this in. There we go. Yeah. So is that a double top, which is a reversal pattern? Now, personally, as I said, I think we sort of probably come down to this area anyway, and I will look at the price action, and if it supports it, well, then very that moves it. If that area where the 20 period daily moving average and the previous high, it doesn't act as support, well, then I think we go to at least the 50 and then maybe to the 200. So, over the next couple of days, this week, as I said, an eventful week, I think we might get that, we might get a little bit of clarity on that, okay? A little bit of clarity. So hence why, I'll just be keeping a very close eye on it and watching that with a view to seeing how that plays out, because I think that could set the tone for the sort of these next 6 weeks of summer. And the NASDAQ is, I'd say, this is the NASDAQ of the week, I'd say it's probably doing quite similar in that sense. If I look at the daily chart, is that a case? Yes, we are nicely, right, but could that be another double top forming? And if so, is that falling back to the 20 and see how it reacts to that 20? Does it find support at that 20? That would be very bullish. If it cracks the 20, well, then I think then we go down to the 50 there. So that's what I'd be looking at there, okay, in terms of the long-term swings. I know that a lot of people are interested in gold, so let's have a little look at there. If I look at gold on the weekly chart, listen, we've had a fantastic run there. That has been that great trend, as I said earlier, all right, when, your job is to find a good trend and try and surf it. When there is a good trend, okay, good trends should leap off the chart at you, all right? You shouldn't need to force it. If you do, you're probably doing it wrong. This is a case of just, letting that play out. However, we printed, a bull flag and we took off, but actually we've sort of drifted a little bit down there. And, last week was a bullish week. It was a bullish week, but, we'd be intrigued to see, what could happen, all right, to move it. Now, the thing about gold, silver, oil, they also are influenced by the dollar. So if we're seeing the dollar strengthen, normally we would see gold weaken a little bit, okay? But, we'll just have to watch that. Certainly on the daily chart, I just look at that as a little bit, we're a little moribund on the gold at the moment. And of course, that can change, drastically by, a tweet by President Trump. So we'll have to wait and see on that ourselves. But yeah, I would watch that. And I think, whereas gold has not had much excitement going on, that's not been the case with silver. Silver's been very different, okay? If you look at silver on the weekly chart, silver has just really had quite some run since the start of those tariff shenanigans. We sold off beneath the $30, which has been a really big, significant level for many years. And from being beneath $30, where we went as low there as 28. You can see that actually, bang, we have pushed our way higher, and in particular the last few weeks, silver really has rallied its way higher, and you've really got to be looking at $39, $40 as targets for it to move towards. Yeah, and that is quite some move. Okay, as I said here, let's have a little. Once again, the daily chart. Okay, we broke our trend line, worked our way, just held. See the 20 period moving average, just basically bouncing off it in an uptrend and off with flow in there. Okay, and so that has been very representative of that. All right, so let's actually have a look now. Let us just focus on the US indices in terms of an intraday motion. Let's have a little look at how they've opened up for the start of this week. What can we read into that? Is there anything that offers itself up as an opportunity at the moment? So once again, I have a set or a profile. I have quite a few bits in the profile, but here we go. What I have here is the Dow on the 30-minute, Russell on the 30-minute, SP 500, NASDAQ on the 30-minute, okay? Once again, I want to see that there is some correlation in the moves and the way they're doing. So in particular, let's see how these markets are setting up, shall we? So let's start with NASDAQ. I'm just going to always sort of draw in significant highs and lows from the sort of early morning of the sessions, just to try and give us some frames of reference to see how prices particularly move. And then I'm looking down sort of 15-minute chart. How's that market open? We can see that that was that first 15-minute candle there. Okay, that's the first 15-minute candle. It's really kind of quite some strong, significant red candle. And let me just, yeah, there we go. From there, I'm just going to draw that in. How are we doing? Going down 5-minute chart. Yeah, we can see it's turned away a little bit there. And going even further down to the 1-minute chart. Yeah, so that was yeah, so that was kind of a nice turnaround there. And now we're in the middle of the kind of the range there, from the high there to the low there. We're in the middle of that range, and I'll probably just watch and see what I personally want to see us do is once we're at particular areas and levels. Then I want to see how does the price operate when price is in the middle of a range. Then as you can see, you've got the 20, the 50, the 8, the 3 price all coiling up a little bit. That's when I get a little bit worried because I think it's just going to sleep a bit. Let's have a look at the venerable old Dow, and I'm looking at the same 30-minute charts here, just looking at identifying significant highs and lows from the earlier morning session. See if that gives us any indication of how price is likely to work its way. Is that the 15? So once again, I'm just gonna draw on the first 15 minutes of the chart. Okay, looking at how it is. I mean, it certainly looks looking very bullish there. Sort of the Dow started off very bullish there. If I go down to the 5-minute chart, yeah, we can see that has been very bullish there. And then we'll look at 1-minute chart. The 1-minute chart we can see is that we started to tick up beforehand. We pulled back at the open, and then we've just literally worked our way up there. I'd be kind of curious there. That is a bearish key reversal there. 1-minute chart. That would be normally I'd be starting to get interested. There we'll just have to wait and see how that plays out. Okay, over the next few minutes, and it's a similar pattern. If we look at SP 500. SP 500, we gapped down, we pushed a little bit lower in the start of the London session, and then we've just worked our way high. And this is kind of an interesting element for us because, back in the day, if people were trading indices, they would invariably what they would do is they'd probably trade the Dow on the FTSE in the morning here, if those was in the UK and Europe, and then they would trade the sort of Dow, Nasdaq, or SP in the afternoon. But now we seem to have much more volume going through the American indexes in the morning. And so, there's strong moves there in the morning that can trade. And we can see here, we pushed out of the Asian zone this morning and then have just really reversed and rallied up very, very strongly there. We've played that out immensely quickly. Let's just have a little look, as I say, what I'm just going to sort of draw those levels in. Let's see what, let's just zoom in. What was So it was actually the red candle here was the first 15 minutes of the actual market. So I'm always going to just draw that in, just to use it as a way and a means to just show us, give us some perspective. 5-minute chart. Yeah. So bank. So yeah. So S&P, whereas the others, have made very strong directional moves, I'd be suggesting that the S&P is kind of not following through on that at the moment. So yeah, whereas you can see here on the Dow we moved strongly up and pulled back, even Nasdaq we moved strongly up. You can see that so kind of S&P is a little bit, it's a bit quirky there. That price action is just working its way. That I'm curious to sort of see how that particularly, how that's likely to be playing out. It's kind of interesting that, I think what I'd be looking at is here that there's kind of the Dow here on that kind of 1-minute chart, just nice from up, nice sort of bearish engulfing bearish key reversal candle, and we've just worked our way lower down there, haven't we, back in towards into the zone, and now I'll be looking to see. Do they follow? Because Dow could move back a little bit. So Dow could move back a little bit. So I'll be watching that to see if that gives me an opportunity in the next hour, so to speak. I also have, interestingly, I have number fix on here as well. So the interesting thing is that, we can see that the VIX on the 30-minute chart, VIX, the kind of that has drifted lower as well. That's drifted lower, now sort of down at 17.25, where, only a few weeks ago we were above 20. So that in itself is kind of good for overall for stocks. When the VIX lowers, that tends to mean people are much more bullish. Okay, much more open to being invested in and trading markets. Yeah. So going into this next hour, I'll be gleefully following that down, but then also having a look at, does the Nasdaq just stay in this particular range? You can see we're kind of halfway between the high of the session and the low of the session so far. I'll be, really needs to kind of break out of there for it for people to get excited and stuff and move towards it. So do that. S&P 500 is there's, I don't think there's anything really there of excitement. It's just going sideways and waiting for it. It might be because there's no real major formal economic data today for the US. Okay, that's not until tomorrow's CPI numbers. Maybe that'll be quieter, but undoubtedly President Trump will say something to invariably light the fires, shall we say. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we will draw it to a close there. As they say, time flies when you're having fun. I hope you found that useful. I hope that's giving you a little bit of help and insight into managing trader motivation, but also a little bit of insight into how markets are setting up for this week ahead. As always, I wish you the best of success in your own trading and investing endeavors. I hope you have a fabulous trading week, and I hope you will join us next week when we talk about is trading an art or a science. Until then, have a great week. Trade well, everybody, and I'll speak to you soon. Many thanks.